Bill, as a Christian, I would assume you believe in what we call miracles.
I do.
As a scientist, you recognize that you have to deal with the physical world and be able to explain it, right?
Right.
So, how then do you take miracles, which certainly seem to either violate, suspend, or disregard, or abrogate physical law? How do you explain miracles?
That's a good question. I think, first off, what is the word miracle? I mean, classically it just means something that inspires wonder. But I think when the medievals looked at it, they saw it as nature being created by God with a determinate character, that it could accomplish certain things left to its own devices, and that some things, though, needed the help from God. You know, a man who's dead is not going to rise from the dead. He's going to need some help. You know, and so I think that was the sense. So in a sense, miracles are grace. It's something doesn't have the capacity in itself to do it, so it needs some help, if you will, from outside. Now, if the world has a determinate character, then it seems that we can say, well, what are in the reach of that character and what is without. And then if a miracle happens, we can look, as it were, at certain antecedent circumstances and say, oh, these antecedent circumstances should not have led to this event. They should have led to some other event. And if a certain event happens which should not have happened, then it seems that we can look at that association and then also understand the discontinuity. We can look at that discontinuity. And I think that's as far, though, as we're going to be able to go in our scientific understanding in terms of what sorts of material processes were involved. I mean, if, in fact, a God who is a spirit, who is not a material being, is interacting with the world, you're not going to be able to get a mechanistic story. I mean, at some point, the mechanistic story is going to run dry. You know, it's just not going to happen.
You don't like the word supernatural to describe a miracle. Why?
Well, it seems to me what supernatural does, it, as it were, gives the naturalist or the materialist, says, you know, we're going to grant you that, you know, you've got the right conception of nature, and then God sort of gets in there on top of it. And it seems to me that, you know, and often it's put in terms of a dualism then. You've got the material world, and then there's this sort of suspect realm of the supernatural, which gets laid over it. And it seems to me that rather the natural order, or material world, is itself an incomplete characterization of reality. You know, so the materialist, it seems, says, you know, you're foisting something on what should be uncontroversial reality. And I would want to say, no, the uncontroversial reality is a much richer reality than the material world, which allows for miracles, which allows for teleology, real directedness, purposiveness. And your materialistic conception, sort of in terms of particles, the laws of interaction, energy, force, space, time, that's an impoverished view of reality, that we need something that's richer.
One of the cardinal principles of understanding reality, physical reality in science, is that it's a closed system, that everything within it, there's a conservation of matter and energy as one unit, as interchangeable as Einstein has shown, so that it's a contained closed system. And once you allow even one miracle, however you define it, describe it supernatural or describe it somehow evidence of a richer system, you're breaking that fundamental principle, are you not?
That's where I would differ with you. I mean, it seems that, as it were, God can get in there without violating any conservation of energy laws or violating physical laws as we know it. Take quantum mechanics, for instance. I mean, you have let's say you've got a chunk of uranium that's decaying, and so the Geiger counter goes off or on. And let's say you just break it into an interval, and when it goes off, you do a check. When it's on, let's say you put a 1 and then you put a 0. Well, now you break it into 8-bit blocks, and that little chunk of uranium is giving you the cure for cancer. You know that there's a design that's coming through there. Yeah, it's a thought experiment, but there's a design that's coming through there. Even though your best physics is telling you, well, this is just some uranium that's decaying. So so the thing is, it seems that there are plenty, even though there's no violation of conservation of energy or anything like that, it still can be an informationally open world. And that informational openness can still have real, tangible effects. I mean, it's interesting, Leo Szilard's paper on Maxwell's demon was, I don't recall the title offhand, but it had to do with he was looking at thermodynamics, and basically this demon, by opening and closing the doors, can as it were, reverse entropy, and do work. And it's just you can get it by having information. So in a sense, information can buy you all the energy you want, but that information need not be energetic. And in fact, John Polkinghorne has explored this idea of what he calls active information. So it's information that's coming into the world that's making a real difference, could even be miraculous, in some sense, and yet is not violating any physical principles.
And is keeping the conservation of matter and energy, and yet introducing some efficacious information that makes it change so that something is B when it would have been A?
Could be that, yeah.
And that still would not violate the law of conservation of matter and energy.
You don't have to do it. Yeah, you can preserve those. I mean, you can get plenty of divine interaction. I mean, I think Bob Russell also does something along those lines, where divine action is through, as it were, quantum interstices. I'm not committed that that's the way it's happening, but I mean, it seems that this is a much more porous universe, porous nature than we would like to allow. There are lots of ways God can get his hands in there if he wants to, even with our best physics. I don't think physics is what's excluding God. I think it's more metaphysics and how we think about the world and what would be worthy of God. I mean, often it's put in terms of God poking the divine finger in there, but I don't think it needs to be conceived in crass terms like that.
And what you do to achieve that is enrich our understanding of what the natural world is, in a sense. Because if a miracle is not defined as supernatural, it's in part of a greatly enlarged natural world, which would have somehow the ability of a non-physical being to participate in it. Is that?
Well, I think often when I think for the modern mind, miracles are articles of caprice. I mean, it's like the capricious deity has gotten in there and just done something, mucked with the system. And the idea that teleology can be working itself out in a way that's coherent, rational, where purposes in history, natural history, human history are being worked out. I think that's
as an endemic part of the system, as built into the system,
as built in and done in a way where it's a coherent drama, as it were, as opposed to just
an odd intervention.
An odd intervention, Deus ex machina. I don't think it has to be that way. And again, though, I think if we're going to the physics, it seems that there are lots of places where information can get in and make a difference. So it's I think these are tough questions, and I think just a final note is I'm not sure we're ever going to get to where was the divine finger poked in, and I think what we can do is after the fact we can see, here's the evidence for design, here's the pattern that emerged that has to be the result of intelligence, but how that pattern got there, we may not be able to detect it. It may just be for human finiteness, our limitations of our intellects.